Ghost Trick Phantom Detective was released for the Nintendo DS June 19th, 2010 in Japan. It was then later released worldwide in January of 2011. The successor to the DS, the Nintendo 3DS, was released across February and March that same year. Even worse, it was revealed in March of 2010, 3 short months before Ghost Trick released in Japan, 10 before it released overseas. The end of a console cycle is often marred with smaller and fewer releases as the console maker and larger third-party developers prepare for the newer hardware. And the owners of said console, knowing a newer machine is on the horizon, tend to purchase less software on their current devices to save for the newer, shinier machine. Ghost Trick, releasing right in the middle of this unfortunate window, well, you could say it was dead on arrival. But Ghost Trick began life many years prior, or at least the idea of Ghost Trick began percolating back in 2004. Shortly after the release of the third game in the Ace Attorney series, writer and director Shu Takumi stepped away. After his extensive time writing about the Japanese legal system, he had wished to evolve the mystery genre, grow past its current restrictions. His time away from Ace Attorney didn't last long. 2004 brought the Nintendo DS to market, and Capcom wished to capitalize on it. Takumi was brought back to help port all 3 Ace Attorney games to the new console, including writing a new episode for the original, and wrote and supervised the development of Apollo Justice, the first Ace Attorney native to the DS. The last of these to release, the DS port of Trials and Tribulations, finally went to market in 2007, freeing up Takumi and his team to focus on his next game, what was then called Ghost Spy. Takumi's initial ideas were lofty. The player was to take control of a ghost to spy on various characters. Being a ghost was the best way to fully delve into each person's personal life, to fully investigate the dozens of tenants in this mysterious apartment complex. Each resident was to be rendered in full 3D, the animations would be larger than life, the colors bright and distinctive. Over the course of development, much of the technical aspects may have changed, but the core concepts remained. Early on, it was decided that the ghost would instead be the murder victim looking for answers, incentivizing communicating over spying. The game was also renamed to Ghost Trick, which is a pun in Japanese. Toritsuku, the word for to possess, is close to the word toriku, or trick. As such, the game also gained an emphasis on possession. Other changes were due to hardware limitations. Takumi's dream of a fully 3D rendered game was not possible on the Nintendo DS. So on the suggestion of the lead programmer Toshihiko Honda, the team opted to rasterize the models. Rasterizing is, in essence, taking a smooth, clean image, also known as vector graphics, and transforming them into pixel graphics. For reference, one of the earliest games to take advantage of this was Donkey Kong Country. This translated to the team taking each frame from every 3D animation, converting each into an image, then rasterizing them into their pixelated form. This process allowed for the impeccable detail to be preserved as best as possible. The brightly colored, hand-animated, larger-than-life, and incredibly fluid visuals were adequately translated. These beautiful motions were then placed upon the already 2D but now pixelated backdrops to create a series of theatrical dioramas. The soundtrack had a comparatively easier time. Masakazu Sugimori began working on the score back in 2004 during the initial ideation phase, so when development began in earnest, most of it had already been completed. In fact, Sugimori had left Capcom in the intervening years, but continued to work on Ghost Trick as a contractor. The score itself was inspired by jazz and fusion, and interestingly, many sound effects and musical cues were written into the script itself. Speaking of the script, this being Takumi and the team's first game after the Ace Attorney series, they were able to make key decisions early on to help with translation. The world that Ghost Trick takes place in was designed to be ambiguous. No words would appear on buildings or clothes, the city itself would be genericized while still being stylized, and the characters would all be ethnically ambiguous. And not only did these decisions make localization a whole lot easier, but it made the vibes of the world feel strange, as if the story could be taking place in any city in any country. The game's development from ideation to release lasted just about 6 years. Then it released, was well reviewed, sold poorly. The iOS and Android ports sold well enough too, but did not do enough to match Capcom's overall expectations. I did not play Ghost Trick on the original Nintendo DS. For me, the game went completely unnoticed, as it did with most others. But those who did play it were changed, altered by the experience. As the years passed, this alteration marinated and materialized as a rabid adoration. Given even the slightest of chances, these people would proselytize the game as if their lives depended on it. And they were loud. As the game aged, as the DS was further and further in the review, the wants, the needs, the pleas, the cries of Ghost Trick grew more and more, begging not only for others to play the game, but for Capcom themselves to remake it, to bring it to modern audiences. Social media shouting and some quite popular Change.org petitions earned it placement at the top of a most wanted remakes list. The fans let themselves be heard, made themselves be heard, and I am not immune to propaganda. As I continued to exist in the video game world, I would occasionally hear these pleas, the quantity of which grew tenfold when Ghost Trick Phantom Detective received an HD remaster in June 2023. Now unshackled by the DS and with the backing of Capcom's RE engine, used primarily on Capcom's Resident Evil series, Ghost Trick was fully realized in three-dimensional glory. The original models were utilized in their pre-rasterized form, a fully remastered soundtrack was composed, the sliding block puzzles from the mobile version were included, an achievement system was added, and music and art galleries were displayed in this brand new package. And I knew, in my heart of hearts, that despite the game being old, despite it being an underselling DS game, if it affected this many people in this deep of a way, I had to try it out. Eventually. It was October 18th, 2023. In a day and a half, I'd be playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But in the meantime, I had nothing. Nothing but a PSN gift card, the knowledge that Ghost Trick was on sale, and a How Long to Beat tab saying it lasted about 12 hours. Just enough time. I sat down to play the remaster of this cult classic video game, and with only breaks to sleep and eat, I beat it in one fell swoop. And I gotta say, those evangelists, they were right. That's you. Yeah, the one with your butt in the air. You're dead. And that girl, she's gonna die next. You gotta help her. You gotta keep her from dying. Okay, well, that didn't go so great, but don't worry, you're a ghost now. You can trick, and you can rewind time. So you gotta go back in time, and you gotta ghost, and you gotta trick to save this girl, to find out who you are, to find out how you died, and while you're at it, maybe try to figure out why this girl's in danger in the first place. In Ghost Trick, you can ghost, and you can trick. That's it. So what is ghosting? No, it's not leaving a person on red. Certain objects in the world have glowing spirits called cores, and when in the ghost world, you can move through these cores, possessing the objects in the process. Well, as long as they're close enough, the ghost range is long, but not too long. And tricking? Again, no, not making someone believe something else would happen. When in the real world, you can manipulate some of the objects you possess. For instance, you can make a tire roll, open an umbrella, turn on a blender. And if things go terribly wrong and you stumble across yet another person who's passed, there's no need to mourn, because you can travel back in time to just 4 minutes before they met their fate. Just enough time to change it. And really, that's it. That is Ghost Trick in a nutshell. The player controls a ghost named Sissel who is doing his best to solve a mystery. He has exactly 2 abilities, ghosting and tricking, but the designers were able to utilize them exceedingly well. The game itself can be bisected into 2 different modes, talking and playing. It's a mystery game, so much of it involves Sissel either conversing with others or listening in on people talk. Throughout these salvos, Sissel will slowly uncover numerous different mysteries that span this single night. And the gameplay puts him into truly immaculate Rube Goldberg machines. Someone will die at the end of the machine, usually. Oftentimes it's Lynn, the redhead, and every time it is Lynn, it gets progressively funnier. But regardless, Sissel needs to save them, and solving these puzzles is deeply rewarding. The puzzle elements vary widely, both in setting and solution. The first is a junkyard with a whole bunch of gunk and doodads to mess with. Another is trying to get across a wine mom's room without getting noticed. Or there's a straight up contraption that will fire a gun if not stopped. And the puzzles themselves are so innovative. Some told me the solution off the bat, but obfuscated how to execute on it. Others told me I needed to get from one side of the screen to the other, but made traversing the space as complicated as it could be. Or as the example I tend to go back to, it's telling me there's an event that will happen, but I need to find a way to stop it, or at the very least, subvert it. Regardless of the actual problem the puzzle poses, solving these Rube Goldberg devices always felt incredible. Well, maybe aside from a couple notable moments at least. And the puzzles are usually paced well too. Most have a fate-changed section, where Sissel has altered enough of the world state to have made a real effect, but still hasn't managed to save the victim. And getting to these moments feels good. Knowing he's made the first steps in saving them, having the text pop up on screen, fate changed, cued with a new musical track was a great motivator to continue on. And the fact that these moments mechanically acted as checkpoints mid-level was another plus. Ghost Trick is one of those games that astonishes with how tight these puzzles are. It wows with how intricately yet elegantly they're designed. It's the sort of game that made me feel like a genius whenever I finally averted a fate. And throughout each run, throughout each puzzle, even when I'd fail, it always felt like I was learning. It always felt like I was making progress. With the aforementioned exceptions, the big one, the notorious one I reckon, I won't go into too much detail, but there was a stealth section and I did not jive with it. How is there a stealth section in a game about being a ghost? Guess you'll have to play to find out. And a more general critique, a couple of the later puzzles took inordinately more trial and error than the early ones did. The puzzles pushed from incredibly clever to frustratingly obtuse. One that sticks out as the football-based puzzle. What football? Guess you'll have to play to find out. Also, at a couple of moments in between the larger puzzles, I had a tough time trying to figure out where to go next. I got caught in a chicken restaurant for a minute. I watched a guy build a card tower for a while. It could have been user error, maybe I missed a line or two of dialogue, but it was a bit frustrating for maybe the 10 or so minutes I spent stuck. All that being said, the incredibly designed puzzle boxes are only half of what makes Ghost Trick so great. The other half is the story. I'll be the first to admit that I don't like the institution of the police very much, and, light spoiler, many of the characters in Ghost Trick are part of said institution. Initially, this was a fairly big hurdle for me, and even after falling in love with the game, falling in love with the story, and falling in love with the characters, I'm not sure I ever got entirely over it. But ultimately, I did fall in love. The mystery that Ghost Trick embarks upon is one filled with many intriguing twists, exciting reveals, and is chock full of well-rounded characters. Some of the bad guys are a bit more one note, but every other person is wonderful, or at the very least fun to be around. Each of the primary characters were all shaped by the ongoing mystery. It colors their pasts and dutifully explains their current actions. So as Sissel uncovers more of the mystery, the other characters' past actions make even more sense in retrospect. Plus they're all so fun. Lynn is undoubtedly my favorite of the supporting cast. Her unyielding optimism was a true joy, and her emotions and actions are colored in so well by uncovering her backstory. The young Camilla and her yapping dog Missile are both adorable. The flamboyant detective Cabanela was fascinating. And there's a lamp. Plus the more side characters like the wine mom, the jail guards, the chicken man, the waitress, the park man, while maybe not as fleshed out as the primary cast, were still so fun in the scenes they had. And despite many being on screen for so little, they were all given at least one good piece of actual personality to make up for their lack of screen time to make them feel well-rounded. While I was playing, I was constantly being reminded that Ghost Trick started as a Nintendo DS game. There were times when it was incredibly obvious, then there were times where I played and was astonished that this game started as a Nintendo DS game. For the remake, all the art and music was reworked for the higher fidelity consoles, and it is all so stunning. Every area is quite vast and so incredibly intricately detailed, it's hard to imagine this much substance being crammed into a tiny DS cart. And the character animations are absolutely amazing to look at. Lynn's jumping at the start of the game, Cabanela's little twirl as he walks, even just the animations that play when Sissel tricks around. It is all so fluid and vibrant and an absolute joy to watch. And while I can't really speak to how well the art and animations were translated from the original, my experiences with them were fantastic, so I can only imagine that the unrasterized versions were accurately implemented. In preparation for this, I listened to a chunk of the soundtrack from the DS version so I could have a better comparison point. And you know what? The soundtrack is incredibly grooving, regardless of which version you're listening to. Of course, I can easily understand preferring the original. For people in a certain age demographic, there's something special about the Nintendo DS's sound capabilities. The slightly crunchy audio, the tinny sound effect on the higher notes. To people like me, these sound fonts are able to unearth a very particular nostalgic emotion, and no amount of remastering will ever win us over. But also, the soundtrack in its original form is great. The smooth and funky beats are a wonderful companion to ghosting, tricking, and detective-ing. Having had my first experience with the remake, I think they did an equally good job with the remastered tracks. Yeah, the tinniness is gone, the songs are not as crunchy, but the instruments used sounded so similar to the originals, they may have well been the actual source, just much less compressed. And in the end, I had a fantastic time solving puzzles to these excellent bass lines and 6 synthetic guitar riffs. I compulsively complete almost every game that I play, and naturally I completed Ghost Trick as well. And I had a wonderful time. Knocking off the last few trophies I missed during the base game led me to finding some incredibly clever solutions. And then I went above and beyond. I taught myself to solve sliding block puzzles. I hate sliding block puzzles, but my want to experience everything Ghost Trick had to offer motivated me to finish a whole bunch of them, manually. I didn't even plug them into an online solver, I taught myself the algorithm. But after being solved, each unlock a concept art that can be lovingly gazed at. It was absolutely worth it. Ghost Trick Phantom Detective delivers a truly amazing mystery. The gameplay is so simple. There are truly only 2 things Sissel can ever do. But these constraints only exemplify the elegance of Capcom's level designers. Their genius shines through their wonderfully crafted puzzles, amazes through their wonderfully molded game. I did not play this game on my DS when I was younger, so I'll never be as truly feral as some fans are nowadays, but I can still appreciate a truly fantastic game when I see one. This is one of the best. Overall, I give Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, the 2023 remaster, a man lying face down on the floor but high up in the air, dead as a doornail, out of 10. With honorable mentions going out to Lynn and Missile and the Lamp. Yes, the Lamp. Thank you so much for watching. Go play Ghost Trick. Right now. Do it. Play it now. Right now. What are you even doing? Go play it. Don't even rate or subscribe or follow my socials, links in the description. Go play the game. It's probably on sale. Or emulate the original, just go play it. Now. I'm at Mario8th everywhere else, by the way. That doesn't matter because you should be playing Ghost Trick. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you after you've played Ghost Trick.